Okay, we're here with Danbert Nobacon at Skylight Bookstore. First
Hello.
question I had is, you come from the 80s DIY anarcho-punk movement in England. What happened to that scene now in England?
I don't know if it really well, it doesn't exist as a scene, but a lot of the people who are older and wiser are beginning to document that scene, or a lot of the bands are reforming and playing just the odd gig, and I think which means that it was really like a formative influence on people's lives, you know, even though it lasted a relatively short time, you know, in the early 80s, I would say, but it inspired a lot of people, and I think people are still making creative use of the energy that came from that.
Okay, how have things changed for Chumbawamba when they were on EMI?
It was a very crazy time. You know, we'd had our own labels and been on indie labels, and suddenly these major record companies were chasing us, and we had long band meetings and disagreements as to whether we should do it or not. And in the end we thought, well, look, we'll just do it, and they'll probably drop us after a year, and we'll have a really good time while we're doing it, and maybe we'll get to like shake some chains or whatever you want to call it. And as it turned out, it lasted a bit longer than a year, but in the end they did dump us because I guess our politics just they couldn't sustain the sort of being with a major company. We just clashed too much in the end, I think.
In American on national TV, you guys were singing Free Mumia with Jamal. Did that reach to other folks who wasn't aware of all that?
I think it did, because, you know, it was on David Letterman, and like after the David, you know, there was a whole, when we actually did it that evening, you know, because they pre-record it, and like the David Letterman staff were saying, we can't broadcast this, we can't broadcast it, but if they hadn't broadcasted it, they'd have a big gap in the show, and so in the end they did, which to the credit, you know, I thought fair enough. And the record company guy said, you know, you're on Letterman, and suddenly you sell like 250,000 records after that appearance. So many people watch it, which is more by many times than we'd sold in the previous 15 years of our career. So that is the power of TV, and we had the Fraternal Order of Police ringing us up and blacklisting us and one thing and another. But it was an opportunity, and we thought, you know, we're on national US TV, we should say something important, and that's what was, you know, part of what we were doing at that time.
Besides your Bigger Than Jesus 7-inch, what other projects have you worked on after that?
Well, I did the solo album in the early 80s, and Bigger Than Jesus, and another EP called Why We're Still in Ireland, and then Chumbawamba became like a full-time concern, more or less, for the next, I don't know, 15 years probably, and it's only since 2004 that I've gone back to solo writing and performing, but I do perform with other musicians, and I live in the US now, and I just wrote this book, and I was in a film last year, Repo Chick, which is a sort of sequel to Repo Man, but not quite, which hasn't got distribution yet. So there's all, you know, every time you try and put something out there into like the mainstream, there's a whole set of obstacles if you're trying to do something creative and that's saying something, I think.
Can you tell us about your book and who published it?
Yeah, the book is called Three Dead Princes, an Anarchist Fairy Tale, and Todd Davis, who set up Exterminating Angel Press out of Southern Oregon, is the publisher, and she asked me last year if I could write an anarchist fairy tale, and I said, well, I'll have a go, I don't know. I tried to write books before and never finished them, and for some reason it just came out pretty easily, really. For me, I was shocked and surprised, pleasantly surprised. And now it's about to be published on October 1st, 2010.
Last question, somebody who never heard of the word anarchism, how would you describe it? Or what it means to you?
Yeah, in the book there's like an afterword, you know, because an anarchist fairy tale is like really a contradiction in terms, but it quotes Peter Kropotkin, who was an anarchist prince, as it turned out. He was a prince and he became an anarchist, and his idea of it was that he observed it scientifically in human communities away from Western Europe and animal communities where people, he called it mutual aid, where people cooperate to sort of get along rather than the the survival of the fittest warped view of evolution. He was one of the first people to realize that there's a lot of evolutionary evidence for people having evolved to cooperate,
So thank you. Good luck with the book tour.
Yeah, thanks.